We'll start with a roll call to account for the members of the panel present on the call. When you hear your name, please unmute and say aye. Raj Sharma.
Aye.
Donald Kahn.
Aye.
James Stevens. Don't believe he's here yet, but we'll hope to have him. And Kelly Innes. Don't believe Kelly is here yet with us.
Cecily, I'm sorry, James Stevens here.
Okay.
James, can you hear us? James? I see him in the panelist list, but I'm not sure if he can hear us.
Okay.
I don't want to interrupt.
Yeah, so we will we'll circle back and just make sure that both James and Kelly are on the call before we start getting into probably the first presentation, hopefully.
Yes,
so.
and Kelly just joined us too. So yes. Looks
Oh,
like
perfect. Perfect.
James.
Okay. So so I will pause right now and just say, James, if you can hear us, can you unmute and say aye? Okay, I can hear you. Kelly, if you're here now and can say aye, just to complete the roll call. Kelly, can you hear us? And if you can you unmute and say aye? Okay, well, might have to circle back on that. But in any event, I'll just move on to review today's agenda. Marta, are there any changes to the tentative agenda as published?
No, there are no changes to the agenda, Cecily. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, in the August 25th email, you received draft minutes of the July 13th, 2022 meeting. Has every DRP member had an opportunity to review the minutes? And are there any corrections or additions to the minutes? And if not, who would like to make a motion to accept the minutes as circulated?
So moved.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Khan. And can I have a second from the panel?
Second.
Great, thank you. I think that was Mr. Stevens. Appreciate it. Excellent. So the motion carries, and now we'll move on to the opening statement. And this is a little bit lengthy, but I'll read it out loud. Just pay attention for those who are joining us maybe for the first time. This is relevant to understand what is in our purview to review and what is not. So Title 4, Subtitle 2, Part 1, Sections 32-4-203 and 32-4-204 establish the Design Review Panel, known as the DRP. The DRP was established to encourage design excellence and shall act in a consulting and advisory capacity to the agencies involved in the process for reviewing development plans. The objectives for the DRP's assessment include spatial, visual, and functional relationships to the topography, the natural and built features of the site, as well as surrounding features of the site, visual and functional integration of streetscapes, pedestrian pathways, playgrounds, recreational amenities, streets and sidewalks are laid out in a safe and convenient manner, and parking is a positive design element. Buildings, parking garages, and other structures are spatially and visually integrated and suitable to their surroundings in proportion massing and type of materials and colors. Signage and other elements of urban design and plant materials are selected and cited to define the site, provide a theme, frame views, enhance the architecture and street character, improve the microclimate, provide transition between dissimilar uses, screen objectionable views and uses, and reduce noise levels and glares. In carrying out its duties, the DRP utilizes the guidelines, plans, and architectural principles in the Comprehensive Manual of Development Policies and/or Master Plan, as well as other guidelines and regulations adopted into law. Certain areas of the county are designated by the County Council to require review by the DRP. The panel will provide a technical review of the proposed project. Issues relative to zoning, setback relief, environmental and stormwater management, and traffic regulations do not fall under the purview of the DRP and are regulated through the appropriate agencies responsible for those aspects of the development plan review process. The panel consists of 9 members. All are professionals with practical knowledge in the matters of design. For the purpose of making recommendations on a particular project, 3 members shall constitute a quorum. The attendance and comments of each member shall be recorded in the minutes, which shall be an open record and available along with all documents submitted to the panel for inspection and copying by the public. There will be an opportunity for the community to offer comments and suggestions at the conclusion of the applicant's presentation. These comments will also be included in the written record of the meeting. When a speaker is called up to speak, please keep your comments focused on the design perspectives within your allotted 2-minute time. If you're speaking on behalf of a community group, however, you will get 5 minutes. At the conclusion of the meeting, the Department of Planning will sum up the recommendations of the panel before a motion for a vote is suggested. Recent legislation has changed the panel's recommendations to be advisory on the hearing officer and the various county agencies, unless the hearing officer or agencies find the panel's actions constitute an abuse of its discretion or unsupported by the documentation and evidence presented. Disposition of the plan will be determined as either approved with conditions, additional review with a second and/or third meeting required. So that is the end of the opening statement, and now we'll move on to the items for initial or continued discussion. So we have 3 items on the agenda tonight: 8222 Bel Air Road, 2119 Eastern Boulevard, and 319 York Road. We'll move on to the first item, and I'll just do a check here to ensure that all presenters are present. Are they all present, Marta, for item 1, which is the 8822 Bel Air Road?
Matt, I believe all of the presenters are in the meeting.
I believe so. I think we have everybody here. Thank you.
Okay. You're
Great.
right.
Very good. So the presenter, the floor is yours.
All right, I'll start. This is Matt Bishop with Kinley Horn. We were before the panel, I believe in June, and we had some great conversation and comments. We've addressed the comments and are back in front of the panel today to hopefully get approval. We made some changes to the presentation, and in the interest of time, I can be happy to run through what the changes are, and then we can open up to questions and more conversation if you'd like.
Yes, that'd be great, Matt, if you could focus on the revisions made to the plan per the comments.
Okay, great. Marta, is this as big as we're going to get it on the screen? Is this what we're going to work with? I think you might be muted.
Yes, this is your presentation. Can you see my presentation?
Yes, I just wanted to, there may be some documents later that we may need to zoom in on if we want to see what's really going on, but we can start with this.
Okay.
It looks like you have an error.
Yes, let me try to fix this. If you can start, and I will try to fix it very quickly.
Sure, so there was a couple of larger issues that we were working through last time. One was the orientation of the building and the site plan. There was a lot of discussion about not having any parking in front of the building and having it all in the rear and the sides. We've gone back and revisited that. We feel really strongly that we have to have at least some parking in the front to support the office and retail uses that we're proposing. So to try and address that, and you'll see on the plan here, we are proposing some angled parking in the front to try and downplay the dominance of the cars. We've had conversations with members of the planning department and others in trying to come up with a solution that kind of works for everybody here. So we'll show that in a minute. We've also, at the request of the design review panel, added some safety fencing around the stormwater management facility behind the building. think that was a good comment, so we've added that. And there was also a request to add additional landscaping in front of the building adjacent to Bel Air Road. So we've added a second row of shrubs both on the inside and on the outside of the landscape and stormwater management area at the front of the property.
Sorry, I'm trying to, again, to upload the drawing. Looks like there are some technical glitches right now.
Let me add in here, Matt, if I might. Tim Catroco here, Madam Chair, good evening, and members of the panel. While we're working through those technical difficulties, let me add the reason for Pat Keller being here with us this evening, Madam Chair. At the conclusion of the last meeting, we went back through our redesign of the property pursuant to the suggestions made by the design review panel. And one of the requests was that we meet with the Perry Hall Improvement Association and the president, Mr. Pat Keller. And we did that, and Mr. Keller had some suggestions and some ideas as well. We reworked our plan, the plan that Mr. Bishop is going to discuss with you here shortly once we were able to pull it up on the screen, and had Mr. Keller take a look at it on behalf of the Perry Hall Improvement Association. And Mr. Keller, you mentioned earlier that you might have a couple of words that you might want to say. They gave you a full 5 minutes. You don't necessarily have to have all 5, Pat, but if you wanted to basically just give your input or opinion on the plan that's being presented, we would appreciate that.
I'm sorry, but we need to wait until the presenter is finished to incorporate those comments from the public, which Pat would be part of in this hearing, in this meeting. So just following the procedure. Thank you, though. Marta, any luck on the technical side?
Marta, you're muted.
I'm working on it.
Okay. Well, I'll ask the question, would it be okay to, this would be jumping procedure, but to take the public comment from Pat while we are, we're trying to work through the technical issues? I'm not opposed to it, but I want to check with the county on that.
I think that should be fine, but
Okay.
But I'm almost there with the presentation. I
Okay.
think I am able to share it now.
Okay,
Let me try one more time.
Perfect. Thank you, Marta.
So can you see my screen?
Yes.
Yeah.
And I think if I'm not switching to the other slides, we can see the plan. I know it's a small plan, but when I tried to switch to the next slide, that's what's happening.
Got it.
This would work, Matt?
That works. Yep.
Okay.
Still a little small, but I think we can get the idea. I'll just run through it real quick again. That if you'll see here, we've added angled parking instead of the straight perpendicular parking in front. We lost a couple parking spaces doing that, and we've added a few in the rear to make up the difference, so we're not deficient from a zoning standpoint. We also have a substantial landscape presence and screening up on Bel Air Road. I know one of the comments was from the planning department to have at least an 8-foot landscape strip. We have substantially more than that. We've got a row of street trees, a row of flowering trees, and several rows of lower shrubs in that area. So I think it meets that intent. So that's kind of from the site plan. Like I mentioned, we did a red line back there that shows an adjacent, or a safety fence adjacent to the stormwater facility in the rear. There was a comment from the panel to provide a photometric lighting plan and indicate the locations of the lighting on the plan. So still at this point in time, we're not proposing any site lighting. We feel we can provide all the necessary safety lighting and area lighting with building mounted, and you'll see that we provided those on the new architecture. We'd be happy to do photometric plans when we get further into the process. It's something we always do when we get into final landscape design with the county landscape architect. And it asks, another comment was providing sign details for all proposed signage. So we're still not proposing any signage. There's no entrance monument that we're proposing. There's no building mounted signage that we're proposing. My client and the owner is really only proposing doing some stenciling or painting on the doors of the actual tenant spaces once tenants are signed up. So we don't really have anything to share at this point in time to really review from a signage perspective. So those are kind of the site related comments. There was some other comments about the architecture. I don't know if Marta, if you can scroll through here. I think we had some additional images on the building materials. We'd add a little more detail to the, I think, oh, maybe go back one. Right. So Brian, do you want to speak a little bit to what we did to change the building elevations?
Yeah, so fundamentally, the two, I guess, major comments that we were dealing with were the three, I guess, the metal canopies, which we've drawn those in a way that expresses that they're metal canopies. We also added, you can see the black lights, which are those are a wall pack cutoff fixture, which I believe we provided the cut sheet for what we're talking about using there. And since all of the parking is very localized to the building and circulation, our intent is to light everything from there. And then the major comment was regarding the brick. And this building, because of its size, we're planning on doing this with a insulated concrete precast wall panel system. And our intention is to use a form liner panel that will give us a brick pattern for the vast majority of everything that you see. Is that the lighter gray is actually a brick patterned piece of design, which will be painted a gray color. So at the end of the day, it will look like painted brick when it's done. So, and I think I provided some additional photographs of what that looks like. What the photographs I provided were the raw unpainted concrete, but it gives you the sense for what the pattern would look like. It looks, you know, very much like brick, and then you paint this like the accent color, and that would give us our brick impression. So we also increased the amount of area of the building that we were doing this patterning in. So and that's the light fixture or something similar that we're looking at, which is a very simple wedge cutoff. And like I said, it's a cutoff fixture, so it won't throw light. So.
I know we also got several additional comments from the Department of Planning. I don't know that we need to run through all those right now. I think we were really trying to address the 5 bigger items from the panel last time. If you want,
well, actually, the panel referred to in the minutes referred to the staff report, and I think that was part of the first motion was indicating comply with all of the conditions of the Department of Planning staff report. We do that so we're not redundant, so that we can reference theirs, but I do think those should be addressed if you've made changes to.
Sure, be happy to run through them if you want quickly.
Please, thank you.
So from the Department of Planning comments, the site design again was really the parking in the front versus in the back. We discussed that. There was a comment about providing 8 foot of landscaping out front with street trees. We've done that. There was a comment about provide confirmation from the county landscape architect that condition L from the performance-based business zone of the county landscape manual is met. We have not done that. We feel strongly that that's met, and we typically would not get review from the county landscape architect until we submit a schematic landscape plan with a development plan. It's very difficult to get his input on stuff this far in advance, but we feel confident we meet that requirement, and we recommend that be reserved for a development plan submittal. Indicate and label on the plan outdoor seating areas. We have identified those. There's a label. We've also, based on comments we received last time, consolidated the common area. Before we had half of the area on one side of the building, half on the other. We put it all on the right-hand side of the building. So there's now 500 square feet of outdoor space on the right-hand side of the building adjacent to the office space. There was a comment about providing a dumpster enclosure detail. I'm still standing strong that we don't need one here because the dumpsters are well behind the property. They're down gradient. They're up against a wooded area, high tension wire, and no adjacent property owners. So I don't feel like having a typical masonry enclosures the best use of resources for that. So that's kind of where we stand with that. There was a question about the site lighting. As I mentioned, we're providing all the wall packs. We're still not proposing any site lighting, freestanding site lighting. If again, when we get into the final landscape plan and the phase 2 process, we're going through permitting and we have to do lighting and photometric plans at that time. If we come up with the results that say we need additional lighting, we can provide a light pole by the dumpster area if necessary, but we don't think it's necessary. It said provide proposed building mounted lighting. We provided those locations and the cut sheets. Provide details for any signage. I mentioned that we're not proposing any signage other than stencils on the windows and doors or on the doors when we get tenants. And then the architectural design, we've added additional detail and more photos of the building materials. I think that covers all the planning department's comments.
Okay, thank you, Matt. Mr. Bishop, does that conclude your presentation? If so, we will move. Thank you. And that this time, then the floor will be open for public input and or feedback from the community. We'll get to Mr. Keller's comments. If you are presenting for the community group, again, you all have 5 minutes to speak. Those who do not represent a community or speaking as individuals will have 2 minutes to speak. So Marta, I'll let you conduct the, I don't know if anyone else beyond Mr. Keller is signed up to speak, but I'll let you begin on that process.
Thank you. Cecily, we don't have anyone else, but Brad, if you have anyone else, just please Cecily know. And I will let me unmute Mr. Keller. Just a second, please. Mr. Keller, can you hear me? Mr. Keller?
Yes, I can.
And you are unmuted and you can speak. Just let me know when you're ready.
Sure, I'm ready. Good evening, members of the design review panel. We're here for 8822 Belair Road. The developer approached the Perry Hall Improvement Association sometime after your first meeting. Our comments related to the site plan were centered really between the building face and the street, the edge of the street. And our concerns were several fold. One is we preferred that the sidewalk be moved back from Belair Road. If you're familiar with the site, Belair Road is a 5-lane highway pretty much, and it's very uncomfortable to walk right on the curb against the highway. And they have moved it back. The second comment was to get the required green space, the 8 feet of green space or plus. And in order to do that, we talked with them, and we all felt like the best solution was angled parking one side only, or then they could reduce the width of that to accommodate the additional green space. This essentially mimics the building across the street. If you're familiar with that, if not, you can Google it and do a street view. You can see the building across the street. It does not have angled parking. It has perpendicular parking, but only one row. So it has a similar look as the building across the street. We also talked about the entryways, which they made both of them two-way, which was fine. We did talk to them about a connection to the adjoining property, and as you look at the site plan, that would be the property to the right of that site plan, and that would be a Popeyes, and I think it's coming to the design review panel. I don't know when that's all taking place. So essentially, we had good meetings with the developer. We feel they met the guidelines, and we're happy with the revised plan.
Thank you, Mr. Keller. And Marta, I don't think there's anyone else. And if there isn't, I would ask you to go ahead and read the staff report.
Okay, there are no one else. Brett, is there anyone else on your end? Brett?
Oh, no, I'm sorry. No,
Not,
Mayor.
I'm sorry, not for this project. It was something in the chat, but not for this one.
Okay. Thank you. Just a second, Cecily, let me bring up the staff report. Can you see my screen? Okay. So I'll start with site design. As always, we prepared our staff report based on comprehensive manual development policies, Perry Hall Community Plan, Baltimore County Landscape Manual, Baltimore County Master Plan 2020, and resolution number 103-20 approved by the council on September 21st, 2020. In terms of site design, resolution number 103-20, if an existing building is being repurposed, parking bays should be located along the sides and rear of the lot, and parking should not be provided in the front. For new construction, any building shall be placed as close to the road as possible, with parking provided at the side or in the back. In terms of foreign image, at this point, in terms of site design, staff cannot recommend approval. In terms of form and image, at this time, staff cannot recommend approval of the form and image. Open space and landscape design, staff recommends approval of the open space and landscape design subject to the following comments. Provide confirmation from the county landscape architects that condition L, performance-based business zones and of the Baltimore County Landscape Manual is met. Number 2, indicate and label on the plan outdoor seating areas. Number 3, provide the details of the proposed dumpster. The proposed dumpster enclosure should meet the requirements of the Baltimore County Landscape Manual Section 3H. In terms of street parking and circulation, staff cannot recommend approval at this time, subject to the following condition. Per resolution number 103-20, if an existing building is being repurposed, parking bays should be located along the sides and rear of the lot, and parking should not be provided in the front. For new constructions, any buildings shall be placed as close to the roads as possible, with parking provided at the side or in the back. In terms of signage and lighting, staff cannot recommend approval of the signage and lighting design based on the following. Based on resolution number 103-20, ornamental street light poles shall be installed that duplicate the look and spacing of those constructed at Perry Hall Elementary School. Provide details for the proposed light fixtures to demonstrate that this requirement will be met. Number 2, adequately demonstrate that the proposed building lighting for the proposed parking at the rear of the property is sufficient. Number 3, provide directional signs at the entry exit to direct the proposed one-way circulation, indicate locations on the site, and provide details. And in regards to architectural design, staff cannot recommend approval of the architectural design based on the following. Resolution number 103-20 outlines that new buildings should be predominantly designed with brick. The building design shall comply with this requirement. And final recommendation, until all the above listed comments are addressed, staff cannot recommend approval. And this concludes our staff report.
Thank you, Marta. So now we'll move to the panelist comments, and let's see. And so let me run through the list. Mr. Khan, if you'd like to start us off.
Sure. I have one question about the building itself. Are the both sides of the building two-story spaces? The tenant spaces?
Yes. Or have the capacity for that.
The one on the right-hand side shows a stairway to a second level. What about the one on the left? Is it a two-story high space? And if it is,
it's a two-story high space, but since it's right now just a shell future tenant space, it hasn't been.
but the intent is that all of the areas that are showing as glass are glass. They're not solid panels, or
If you look at the rendering, it's clearer, but yes, that's correct.
I'm sorry.
So in the center of the space there, you can see that those are solid panels. On the two wings that we're discussing, there's glass above and windows on the side. That's correct.
Right, that's right. On the sides, understood that.
That's correct. With the intent, now the intention would be that if there's a two-story tenant, yeah, that would be the intention. But that left side is pretty close up to
Right.
not very visible from the road because of the tree line that's there.
And the canopies that have been added are now metal. Is that what we understand?
They always were. It's just that they're rendered as metal now.
And the color is neutral, similar to what we're
It's
looking.
the intention is it's a clear anodized to match the storefront system. It's a silver color.
Okay, yeah, I mean, I think there's some issues at the end of the day, but those are really my questions for the moment.
Thank you, Mr. Khan. We'll move on to Mr. Sharma.
Okay, so I have just one question, want to refresh my memory. Since the parking is encouraged for the backside, rear of the building, how does the entrance look from the backside of the building?
So we're not proposing the visitor parking to be in the rear. We're proposing it in the front. The parking in the
There's
rear
some
would
in
be
front,
for,
some in back.
right, the parking in the rear would be for employees.
Okay. Okay, so question, so the people parking in the rear, would they access the building from the front or from the rear side?
From the rear.
From the rear. So that's what I was looking at too. How is the entrance from the rear side?
On the rear side, I believe there's at least one man door, and then there's at least 3 overhead doors for the restoration business.
That's correct.
Okay. Do you have any rendering of rear side or not? Or the plan?
I don't know if we have a rear.
If you look at I don't have a rear elevation, but if you look at the floor plan, you can see where the doors are located.
Okay, I see that. All right, thank you.
Any further comments or questions, Mr. Sharma?
No, I don't. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Ennis, if you'd like to go next, Kelly? We have Kelly?
Yes, we have Kelly, and I know that she provided chat window a comment that she can hear us and she can. Kelly, can you unmute yourself?
Unmuted.
Kelly? Yes, now we can hear you. Perfect.
Great. I'm sorry. I have no other comments.
Okay, thank you. James, Mr. Stevens, if you'd like to go next.
Sure. I guess I would like to start with saying, you know, I'm in agreement with the additional detailing that's on the facades. I guess my only concern or real major recommendation is that the precast concrete panels that's brick, I don't have a problem with. What I do have a problem with is that they should mostly be a reddish brown brick to really representing the character that exists in the neighborhood currently. It should not be the grayish concrete brick panel, precast panel. That's all. Outside of that, I'm in complete agreement with the architecture and the site. I guess on the site part, the rear parking, I have some objections with there not being any site lighting. That's all. It just seems like there should be some site lighting in the rear of that building where individuals are parking. That's all. You know, I understand the wall packs on the perimeter of the building. That's fine, and it's probably enough for the front of the building. But you know, with what's for the safety of the individuals and having access to the rear of that building, I would say, you know, site lighting is needed. So that's my comment.
Thank you, Mr. Stevens.
You're welcome.
Okay, so I'll jump in here. I know that a number of us, and there were a couple of folks who aren't with us who had comments at the last session, the initial submission. I would say that while I appreciate that the presenters and the applicants have met with the community leaders and have talked through and worked through some of the details, I don't think that this is meeting the design guidelines and especially the resolutions that were clearly added to try to move new development in a direction that's less auto-centric. So I don't think this plan has addressed those. I think it's still, you know, I think it kind of is still trying to promote an auto-centric environment when the design guidelines clearly have tried to create an environment that is less auto-centric and has buildings moved to the street with parking to the sides and rear. So I don't think that that has been addressed by the applicant. I think also I would also echo Mr. Stevens' comments about the site lighting, and I think previously other panelists had mentioned that as well, asking for a photometric lighting plan, that some of the rear lighting may not be adequate near the employee parking as well as around the dumpster, but also most importantly is the street lighting that, you know, again, this was a resolution that was clearly indicated for the betterment of trying to take the Bel Air Road into a new direction, and I don't think that's been addressed. I think there is room to incorporate that street lighting, so I think that should be incorporated and meet not just the intent of the guidelines, but the expressed directive from the guidelines that shall be included. Another comment that was made was the pedestrian access from the sidewalk, the public sidewalk along Bel Air Road to the building frontage. Not clearly seeing on the plan how that's addressed, that people would move from that sidewalk to the building frontage. Again, and we all know that the condition of Bel Air Road as it exists today is not pedestrian welcoming, but all new development should start to, as it comes, one by one, should start to promote a different relationship between the buildings and the public road and that environment. And I don't think this proposal is doing that. The dumpster enclosure, we recognize that it's in the back, but again, there is a resolution that requires that. So I would say that this again is not in compliance with the resolutions that are requiring that. Moving on to the brick, well, I think it's good to try to emulate brick. Again, the resolutions are very clear that it should be predominantly brick, not a false brick, not brick panels, not a facade tilt-up material that's impressed with brick, but brick. It doesn't detail in the same way as real brick. And I think as Mr. Stevens said, it doesn't even read like brick of this, kind of the traditional surrounding context, not the auto-centric, but the traditional context of the site isn't represented by the colors chosen. So, for those, the building siting, dumpster enclosure, street lighting and site lighting, the brick, and then the pedestrian access, I believe all of those reasons, I don't think this proposal has addressed those, pretty critical measures that were noted in the guidelines and then the resolutions. That I will conclude my comments. And I'd ask at this time if there is a panel member who would like to make a motion to, again, approve the project with conditions, or not approve, or approve. Mr. Stevens, hearing no volunteers, I'm going to ask if Mr. Stevens would like to take the first initial stand at making a motion.
I would make it a motion, but I'm torn between approving with conditions or not approving with conditions. It's leaning more towards not approving with conditions. I mean, with most of what you really highlighted, it's very appropriate. From there should be brick on the facades. There's most definitely should be site lighting in the rear. There should be more of an engagement with entry from the sidewalk on Bel Air Road to the entry, the front facade of the building. Also, the enclosure of the dumpster should, be masonry. I'm hoping I am covering most of the items that needs to be adhered to by the team. If I'm leaving something out, please someone emphasize which item that is.
Yeah, so no, I think you covered what the group talked about, but I think your first question is probably a good one for the group to discuss before we formally make a motion. Does anyone on the panel have, let's go around, I'll kind of do a roll call and just make sure we're all on the same page in terms of what the motion should be in terms of the two proposed by Mr. Stevens, not approve or approve with conditions. So I'll go to Mr. Sharma first.
I think we can go ahead with approval with conditions.
Okay. Kelly?
I'm inclined to agree with approve with conditions, but Cicely, I think your assessment of those conditions was extremely accurate. So I think they should actually reflect what you prefaced.
Okay.
Prior to Mr. Sharma.
Okay, and thank you, Kelly. And Donald, Mr. Khan, want to weigh in on that?
Yes, a couple of things. I mean, if we're approving with conditions, what is the position on the parking in the front and the position of the building? What is included in the motion at this point for my clarification?
I can, as you heard in Marta's staff report, it's pretty clear that there is a resolution that requires that the building does not have parking in front, that the building is pulled forward along Bel Air Road. That's what's in. Thank you, Marta.
Right.
Right. So this, that's what again, this is a resolution that was passed specifically to address this area of Bel Air Road. So that, when I look at this, I look at the community had the intent, and this resolution was passed to have new buildings, not have parking in front, but place as close to the road as possible, with the parking in the back or on the side.
Right. And that's part of the motion that's at the moment. The only thing I would add that we haven't addressed is based on the floor plans, I think we should include an elevation of the back of the building. There would certainly need to be additional doors there for proper egress from the spaces. But I think no matter what we do, I think we should be seeing the back of the building as well to see how that gets resolved.
Yeah, and I'm sure the applicant has that. So I think yes, it's a good call to have that included in the submission package for sure. Okay, so just to ask Mr. Khan, just to be clear about this, are you on the side of approving with conditions or not approving?
Well, I'm struggling with that too. To approve with conditions is essentially to not approve very much of what's been presented. So I think it's sort of moot. I think we're asking the development team to reconsider so many things that it's almost moot as to how we position the response.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I'll just weigh in here. I just think, this has been before us back in May, I believe, and I think although some minor adjustments have been made, I think the crux of the submission, in my eye, has not been revised to address the majority of the kind of the overarching comments that were in the staff report and that are still in the staff report. I don't believe that this has moved the needle much on that. And again, maybe it's because I write design guidelines and have to design by them that I put weight into that. But I think our duty as the design review panel is to look at those design guidelines that were approved, and certainly resolutions that have been adopted, and try to adhere to them unless there is there are always caveats or exceptions, where there's absolutely no way to adhere to those because of certain site constraints such as topography or an entrance. I'm not seeing that here, so my opinion clearly is that this is not meeting the intent of those and is not approvable. Okay, so with that debate and hearing all of that, Mr. Stevens, I'm coming back to you to put forth a motion.
Okay. Well, I will make a motion of not approving this project on Bel Air Road. There must be a total adherence to the staff report, which includes the building moving forward towards the Bel Air Road with parking in the rear. As Donald indicated, a rear elevation. Also, the incorporation of site lighting in the rear, and the incorporation of brick on the facades of the building, as opposed to the precast concrete panels. Also, the dumpster should adhere to an enclosure of masonry, and I think that, and from the sidewalk on Bel Air Road, a more convenient entry towards the front facade of the building. That is the motion on the table.
Okay, thank you for summarizing that. I just want to make sure that the county has that, and if there's any further debate on the subject before I ask for a second. Okay, so I think that was very clear. Thank you for that. And I'm going to ask if there's another panel member who would like to second that motion.
Second.
This is Kelly. I have a
Oh,
second.
okay. Sorry, I think Mr. Khan beat you to that second, Kelly, but so there is a motion and a second. So now I'll call for all in favor, say aye.
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 Okay, so I did hear all five. That motion carries. So thank you very much. And with that, I think the applicant will need to go back and speak with planning staff a bit further and readdress some of the concerns noted by both the county as well as the panelists here tonight. And with that, I think we shall move on to the second item. Okay. Yes.
This is Mark. I just wanted to clarify. The motion is to comply with staff report also, right?
Yes, that was the beginning of the motion.
Okay.
Yes.
Thank
And then I think Mr. Stevens just iterated, the building siting, dumpster enclosure, site lighting, I guess including street lighting.
I got everything. Yes, thank you so much.
Very good.
Just give me a second to bring up the next project.
Very good. Thank you. And while you're bringing up, I'll just say that's item number 2 is 2119 Eastern Boulevard, Shiny Shell Essex Commercial Review. And as soon as we have that on screen, the floor will be the presenters. Thank you, Marta. And if all the presenters are here for item number 2, the floor is yours.
Thank you. For better or for worse, you have me again. It's Matt Bishop, Kinley Horn, representing Shiny Shell, and my client Brian Prince is on the call as well. So if you're ready, I will try and do a fairly brief run through of our presentation.
Yes, go ahead.
Okay, thank you. So we're proposing a new car wash at 2119 Eastern Boulevard. It's up near Lockheed Martin site and the Martin State Airport, if you know that area of Baltimore County. What we have on the cover sheet is a rendering of the front facade of the building. As I do with all these presentations, I'll run through some quick background information and then get more into the design. So Marta, if you would please, next slide. The site is currently vacant. It was the home of a McDonald's. I'm not sure how long it's been vacant for, but it's been repainted. It doesn't even look like McDonald's anymore. But I think it's been vacant for quite a while. We do need a few variances. I know the design review panel likes to know about that. So because of the car wash use and the configuration of the property, we would need a variance for the exit lane being closer than 50 feet from the adjacent road. Car wash entrance is facing a residentially zoned property, and as you'll see later, that residentially zoned property actually houses a very large EG substation. Not sure why it's zoned residential, but it's not actually used residentially. And on that same side, where we're adjacent to the transformer station or the substation, we don't meet the landscape transition area, so we need a small variance for that as well. And in addition, we need a special exception for the car wash use. Car washes all require special exceptions in basically any zone they're permitted in, so that's not unique to this property. Next slide, please. I'll run through some of the neighborhood context. Next slide, please. So this is more of a context aerial photograph. You'll see our site in the middle. As I mentioned before, for reference, part of the parking lot for Lockheed Martin site is to the east. There's a good-sized shopping center to our west, across the street from Kingston Road. Directly to our south is that electrical substation. To our northeast is another commercial strip center. And across Eastern Boulevard to the northwest is a commercial and residential community. Next slide, please. This is a zoomed in aerial photograph showing you what it was before. It's McDonald's, as I mentioned, paved pretty much all 4 corners of the property. We have 2 access points on Eastern Boulevard. We intend to keep both of those, and 1 on Kingston Road. We intend to keep that entrance as well. Next slide, please. And I'll just run through these. These are some street view photographs from Google Earth. This is from Eastern Boulevard looking north. Next. Thank you. This is again from Eastern looking straight onto the property and the building. Next, please. This is the adjacent retail building that I mentioned directly to our north on Eastern Boulevard. Next slide, please. This is the electrical substation to our rear, which I mentioned is zone RC or DR 10-5, I believe. Next slide. And this is the adjacent commercial shopping center to our south across the street from Kingston Road. Next, please. Oh, sorry, and this is across Eastern Boulevard, directly across our site looking northwest. Next, please. It's a quick zoning map The site is zoned BLAS, which is business local with an automotive service overlay. And the DR 10-5 to our south. Next, please. I'll go into the site improvements. Next slide, please. So this is some of the features of our site plan. We have a car wash, rollover car wash tunnel planned north. You would enter the tunnel from the rear, so plan right, adjacent to where the electrical substation is. Go through the tunnel and exit plan left, plan west onto Eastern Boulevard. As I mentioned, we're keeping all 3 existing entrances, 2 on Eastern Boulevard, 1 on Kingston Road. We have proposed 24 parking and vacuum spaces and extensive landscaping. So they've got a strong streetscape, adjacent screening. There's an existing sidewalk on Eastern Avenue, which we are going to keep, and along Kingston Road as well. So there's an existing sidewalk network in place we'll keep. We are proposing a Filterra stormwater management facility. The site is almost 100% paved now, so our stormwater management requirements are not terribly arduous. We are providing site lighting. We are providing building mounting lighting. And there's really not a lot of grading going on. The site is relatively flat, and we intend to keep our proposed grading similar to what's there now. We will have building mounted signage, which you'll see later in the package, and 1 monument sign, which is hard to see on this plan, but it's kind of centrally located on Eastern Boulevard side, kind of in between the 2 entrances. Next slide, please. This is just a more detailed site plan with a bunch of standard checklist notes, our landscape calculations showing you that we meet the landscape manual requirements. Next, please. And then I'll run into some building design, and I'll get into some of the basics and kind of an overview, and if necessary, I'm going to let Brian chime in on some more details if he'd like. But what we're seeing here is a typical shiny shell car wash. Next slide, please. A floor plan, which I won't get into, but you can go through our package if you want to see how everything works internally. There is a customer space, there's employee space, there's mechanical space, but the majority of the space is a drive-over car wash tunnel. Next slide, please. These are the required elevations that call out building materials, building height. I'll get into a little bit more of the building materials in a minute. Next slide, please. The rear entrance, or the entrance into the car wash, and the rear elevation. Next, please. These are renderings of the basic color scheme. I think they're communicated better in some of the photographs we'll see later, but these are renderings of the elevations. Next, please. More of the building elevations. Next, please. So here we'll talk about the building materials. I'll stick here for a minute, but you'll see that we're using a mix of concrete block, metal panel, glass, blues and oranges, canopies. Next, please. These are some of the building samples, material samples. So I mentioned split face block, metal panel. Next, please. More pictures of the materials. Next, please. These are the cut sheets of the site and building mounted lighting. So we have full cutoff fixtures for the parking lot and the wall packs for the building. Next, please. Another one of the building mounted light fixtures. Next slide, please. This is a map showing the location of the wall mounted or the building mounted site lighting. Next, please. And we'll get into a bit of the signage. So this is the signage package. I believe these are all the wall mounted signs. You have the car wash across the building, excuse me, the long edge of the building, and then the shiny shell over the entrance. Next, please. A rendering showing where all the signage is. Next, please. And this is a rendering of the freestanding monument or pylon sign that's adjacent to Eastern Boulevard. So that's our full presentation. I apologize. I meant to introduce Brian a little bit better and give him an opportunity to introduce himself and Shiny Shell, but I kind of rolled into our presentation kind of quickly. Brian, if you'd like to speak now and introduce yourself and your company, it'd be great. If not, we can move into the panels.
Oh, no, appreciate it, Matt. Yeah, thank you, panel, for the time tonight. Appreciate the opportunity to present. Brian Prince with Shiny Shell Car Wash. I represent the owner and operator of this express car wash business. I think Matt did an excellent job of giving an overview of the proposal and the vision we have for the site. I'm happy to answer any questions you have about the site design, building design. Had the chance to look at the staff report and comments, so I have nothing to add at this point in time.
Great, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Prince and Matt. So at this time, the floor is open for public input and feedback. Again, if you're representing a community group, you'll have 5 minutes to speak. As an individual, you'll have 2 minutes to speak. So Marta and Brett, are there any community members who have signed up this evening?
Yes, Cecily, we have at least one community member, Mr. Petwood, or I'm sorry, I'm not sure. You are here. Can you hear us, Petwood? Hello?
Yes, I can hear you.
Yes, you are now, so you are here in the meeting now, and you will have 2 minutes if you are not representing any communities, but if you're representing
I
communities.
represent the Hawthorne Civic Association. Since
Okay,
I'm here.
okay, so
Yeah.
you will have, as Cecily mentioned, you will have 5 minutes. And let me know when you are ready.
I'm good to go now.
Okay, thank you.
And gentlemen, I remember from our meeting last week with the community association, and we really appreciate you guys for coming out to that. My concern is, once again, is the Kingston Road access. You guys cannot see me, so I can't kind of show you on your drawing that I have about what issues that will cause as far as the shopping center being across the street. And there's another access 20 feet up on the shopping center side that people exit and enter into there as well. So I'm not sure if any of you gentlemen or anybody on the panel has been on Kingston Road or went to Gersbeck's on a Saturday, but trying to get that out of there along with the residents, because it is the only exit on the peninsula. There's no other way to get out of the peninsula unless you cut through Gersbeck's parking lot and go to Eastern Avenue that way. So from speaking to other community members, plus people outside the community that shop here, they're not seeing how that access is going to work if it's left open. Because what happens is if you leave it open, you have the left-hand turn going off of Kingston onto Eastern. People will try to jump across those 2 lanes to make that left onto Eastern. What else happens is people will leave a gap for them to come out, but what they do is they block the right-hand lane where people can, then it prevents people from exiting the neighborhood by making a right on Eastern Avenue or having to wait till the light changes. And you also have that issue at the access across the street at the shopping center. People will leave a gap and then people come out and will block the lane because people leave them in there, even though they're not supposed to come out and block the lane, but they do anyway. So, I mean, the general consensus is we would like to have it closed off if you guys want to go ahead and, you know, if this goes ahead, because I do not see that working in any good way. So that's my first point. Second one is the lighting. From what I understand, you only have lighting on the building itself, nothing in the parking lot. So, I mean, is the lighting going to be on? Oh, shoot.
We're actually proposing a few lights in the parking lot, if I may
In the
add.
parking lot. Now, will they be ran all night? Or are you going to shut them off at closing time, or how's that going to work?
They would be on, if allowed, per the ordinance through the night.
Okay. All right. Very good. And I guess I think that was the only 2. Oh, the signs. You're proposing signs on Kingston and Eastern Avenue off the sidewalk? Is that what I read in the presentation? Or
No, I think at this point, we just have one main pylon sign on Eastern Avenue or Eastern Boulevard frontage.
Yeah, that is correct. There's just the one monument sign on Eastern Boulevard.
a monument sign. I'm not familiar with that. Can you tell me what that is?
The sign that was shown earlier, we can jump back to it.
One or two more, Marta. That's it. Thank you.
So Pat, that would be the sign on Eastern Boulevard. That would be the only signage that's not affixed to the building.
Gotcha. So
There would
Eastern
be
would
nothing
be
on it.
okay. So yeah, Eastern would be to the left of this sign you're saying. So that flat side is going to be okay.
So there would be no detached signage on Kingston.
Gotcha. Okay. All right. I think that's about all I had for you guys. I mean, the main concern is going to be the traffic, obviously, even on Eastern Avenue with that right-hand lane, because that's an exit lane onto Martin's as well as a merge lane. So I think traffic's going to is the biggest issue, at least for the community and surrounding communities. So I think that's all I have. Thank you, gentlemen. Appreciate it.
Hey, thank you.
Thank you, Pat. So, Cecily, there are no other speakers, but let me check with that. Brett?
Yeah, there's some someone put something in the chat that they were like read into the record. It's Miss Jan Miller of 2140 Courthorne Road. She's a neighbor to the property. Her statement reads, she's concerned with the major traffic backups and multiple accidents occurring near as a result of 2 access roads too close to the intersection of Eastern Boulevard and Kingston Road. The curb lane on Eastern is actually part of the limited access intersection at Eastern and Martin Boulevard. While not as heavily traveled as many years ago, it provides access to the large complex of buildings and open waterfront that is prime for development at the head of the Wilson Point Peninsula. It will be anticipated upon development that the access road will see much more traffic. Would it be feasible to rotate the building 90 degrees? So the back of the building is parallel to rear property line. Have only one access on Eastern and current existing access on property known as 2121 Eastern, would eliminate congestion at intersection, permit stacking before entering car wash, and they do not have have backup at car wash exit onto Eastern. She also said also reconfigure service parking to maintain flow and no dead ends. There does not appear to be an escape lane should vehicle be in stacking and decide not to get car wash. And those were her comments.
Jan?
Thank you, Brett. And are there any other community members signed up or in the chat?
That was it.
Okay, thank you. And then, so Marta, we'll move on to the staff report if you're ready for that.
Thank you, Cecily. I just need 1 second to bring it up. Cecily, can you see my screen?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. So I will start with our staff report for the 2119 Eastern Boulevard project. So as always, the Department of Planning prepared comments based on comprehensive manual of development policies, Baltimore County Master Plan 2020, Baltimore County Landscape Manual, also based on Eastern Baltimore County Pedestrian and Bicycle Access Plan, Eastern Baltimore County Revitalization Study, Community Conservation Plan for Essex Middle River, and Essex Design Guidelines. So in terms of site design, staff recommends approval of the site design. For the form and image, staff recommends approval of the form and image. For the open space and landscape design, staff recommends approval subject to the following conditions. Number 1, surface parking lots should incorporate canopy trees to the greatest extent possible. Number 2, per Essex design guidelines, surface parking lots should incorporate canopy trees to, oh, sorry, I think this is repeats our comment, so it's the same comment. Per Essex design guidelines, proposed landscaping and fences should be used to screen the view of parked cars, provide a decorative fence in combination with landscaping to screen the view of parking. For the streets, parking and circulation, staff recommends approval subject to the following conditions. Number 1, the site plan indicates 24 parking spaces for vacuuming. However, only 1 is required for vacuuming. Reduce the proposed number of parking spaces and replace them with landscaping. Please provide an explanation why so many parking spaces are being proposed. Number 2, clearly indicate on the plan the proposed locations for the vacuuming machines, provide details and drawings of the vacuuming machines. Number 3, indicate on the plan the number of parking spaces required for employees and label them on the plan. Number 4, per Essex design guidelines, surface parking lots should incorporate canopy trees to the greatest extent possible. Number 5, Per Essex design guidelines, proposed landscaping and fences should be used to screen the view of parked cars, provide a decorative fence in combination with landscaping to screen the view of parking. And for architectural design, staff recommends approval of the architectural design subject to the following condition. Consider different building materials for the proposed car wash. Per Essex design guidelines, buildings should be constructed of durable, sustainable, and low-maintenance materials that sustain their test of time. Brick, stone, metal, wood, and cementitious siding are the preferred building materials. The use of replacement materials that imitate or falsely replicate natural applications should be avoided. Building materials should be appropriate to the urban context. And this concludes our staff report.
Thank you, Marta. I do have one question for you, just so I understand. Have the 2021 Essex Design Guidelines, have those been adopted? Are we still working on the 1983? Sort of.
No, they were adopted. 2021 were adopted last year.
I see. Okay. Okay. All right. So with that, let's move on to the panel members. Sorry, just one moment here. Okay, so let's start in a different order this time. Let's start with Kelly.
Hi. I think I have a question for Marta and the team with the context to the natural materials. I'm sorry, I'm kind of navigating through my files here. What exactly are you referring to from the standpoint low maintenance materials that stand the test of time? What are you viewing as falsely replicated materials within the context of the renderings?
So basically, we are open to any suggestions. This is exactly how it's stated in the design guidelines. So we just want to point it out this to the panel, and this is up to the panel to any recommendations, suggestions. This is up to the panel.
Okay, so assuming that the exterior finish palette is representative of the renderings and as is appropriate to an exterior finish application, I have no further comment. I think it's acceptable based off of what I'm viewing on the screen. I would, yeah, that's my comment. I think it's acceptable. That's what my expertise and that's what I can comment on.
Okay,
my area of expertise. Thanks.
Understood. Okay, very good. Let's go to Mr. Sharma next.
I don't have any comment. I'm good.
Okay, Mr. Khan.
Can we look at the site plan one more time, just on the question of access and egress? So it's my understanding that all three of those locations are existing. And I guess the question on Kingston Road is whether that's from the comments we heard from the community, is that an egress issue or an ingress issue, or is it both in terms of concerns about traffic? Have we understood that from the community?
It's both.
Okay.
People coming off Eastern Avenue onto Kingston and then making a left into that access on Kingston, you'll have traffic all backed up at the light. So they'll sit there until they're able to make that left. Meanwhile, everybody making a left-hand turn on the Eastern at rush hour is sitting out in the middle of Eastern Avenue until somebody lets that person in to make a left into that access.
Well, I guess that's what I was asking. If that's
Yeah.
only an egress at that location, is that a simpler, does that help that problem sufficiently?
What do you mean? People only being able to go in?
Come
Or
out of the
come
site.
out? Well, it would solve half the problem because, like I said before, people be coming out, they'll want to make a left onto Eastern Avenue. So somebody will leave a gap while they're sitting at the light. That person will pull out and block the right-hand lane. Then nobody can get to Eastern Avenue that's in the right-hand lane until the light changes because somebody left a gap. This person comes out, can't get all the way into the gap, so they block the lane. So that's a big problem. That's what I'm hearing from a lot of people from the community and outside the community as well. People that shop in the shopping center have to leave by that way as well. And they get stuck in that stuff. And like I said, there's an access across the street about 20 feet up where the same action happens. People are trying to come out on the Eastern and they either want to get all the way over to the right-hand lane because they want to go right on Eastern, or they're trying to jack it up while they want to make a left-hand turn. So it was an issue with McDonald's and anything that's been there, to be honest with you. And I've been here for 30 years.
Right. Thank you.
Sure.
And then, of course, the other question was the issue of so many vacuum locations and whether, if there weren't that many, whether there could be more green space on the site. And I guess, trying to resolve whether we need, well, the development team needs that many spaces dedicated to that use. And it's sort of a dead end configuration anyway. And I guess, and then the only other question I would have obviously is the question of the bypass lane. I think, it is a requirement in other kinds of uses like, drive-through restaurants and drugstore drive-throughs and banks and all the rest. I'm just curious why it isn't a requirement for this kind of a use when there's such a long line of stacking that occurs here, which is longer than most similar uses. Those I have no other comments. I understand the building design and that kind of thing. I have no comment.
Is there an opportunity for us to respond, or do you just want to hear from the panelists and we'll take comments later?
So if a panelist asks a direct question like the stacking or the vacuum, it would be great if you could respond so we can have that knowledge before we hear repeat comments.
I'd be happy to. So I'm actually doing quite a few car washes. They become a very popular item these days, and the vac spaces are very important for the operation and success of these car washes. So yes, the answer is we need as many of the vacuum spaces as possible to make sure it's a viable project. And for the bypass lane, interestingly enough, I'm almost positive that there's no requirement in the Baltimore County design manuals for bypass lanes. I'm not saying that there shouldn't be one, but there are plenty of instances where there aren't bypass lanes. I can think of a handful of existing drive-through restaurant uses that don't have them. So it's not necessarily a requirement. And Mr. Prince, do you have any anecdotal insight on any of your other car washes on what you deal with or how you handle the lack of a bypass lane in case somebody wants to get out of line?
Yeah, the answer is we've done them in other locations, and over the years, the hardware, the equipment in the tunnel that washes the car has improved over time. And so several years back, the bailout lane or bypass lane was really a necessity. Now the equipment is so sophisticated. If there's an issue with a vehicle in the stacking in the pay lane, you can automatically push a button and the equipment retracts, and you can just take the car right through the tunnel. And that's a safer, easier way to resolve that issue. As it relates to the number of parking stalls, you know, as you can see, this is a large site. It's over an acre property. The McDonald's, the existing site, has over 60 parking stalls. Our site is showing 24, so it's a dramatic reduction in parking stalls relative to what's existing today. The reason we have that number of stalls is for a couple of reasons. One, it's really similar to the pay lane design. It's not really necessary for all hours of the day. As you can imagine, car wash has a seasonal component to it, and there's peak seasons and there's peak hours. And so a lot of it has to do with ensuring that we have a site that will accommodate kind of a peak season and peak hours during the week. And this will absolutely do that. We have a site and a scale of a site that will provide ample stacking in that pay lane, as well as parking, to ensure that we don't have a conflict with cars on site or stacking that would otherwise go out onto Eastern or Kingston. This site will, as designed, will very well accommodate those peak hours that can come on a weekend after a big storm. But during the week, on an average hour during the day, you know, we won't have the majority of these stalls full, but it's very helpful during those busy hours. That really, for the car wash use, those peak hours don't come during the traditional peak hours of morning, AM and PM, you know, going home traffic. It's typically midday from 11 to 2 or 3 is where we see a lot of our traffic. And so it's very complementary to the traditional traffic patterns that I think members of the panel and the residents have spoken to, that we've talked to the community council about the traffic on Kingston and Eastern. But that's a little insight onto why I've designed it this way.
Thank you for addressing those two concerns. Any other further questions or comments? And then if not, Mr. Stevens, I think you are up. James, are you with us? And do you have any comments or questions?
I am so sorry. This mute and unmute button is going to kill me. But anyway.
Yeah, I don't think it's killed anyone yet. I think you're fairly safe, but we all stumble.
It's trying. Anyway, my main comment is the first image on this presentation is what you're saying is your front elevation, and it's not. I understand this is a prototype. You know, you look at the site plan, and what's being projected is a different front elevation. And you know, if you look at A21, A22 and A23, I guess, you know, your rear elevation is really your front, and your front elevation is really your rear. And I guess from my perspective, how are you really going to handle the signage, which is not indicated on your your real front elevation? So I would really like to see that redone correctly and incorporating your signage, so we are clear on how that's being handled on that elevation. I understand this is a prototype, but there still should be some clear understandings of how you present this information on a drawing. That's all. So that's really my comment, because on the front page, the front drawing, that's not the front elevation. That's all. So I really would like to see it redrawn correctly and how you're going to really integrate signage on that facade. So that's, I mean, I understand this is a prototype, but you know, it was, when I was looking at the site plan and then looking at the exterior elevations, it just, there's no harmony at all. So anyway, let's just clearly indicate what that front elevation is going to be and how you're going to incorporate signage to really convey that correctly.
Any input on that? Does the applicant want to address, you know, obviously I think it's the side elevation is the one we're looking at here that's labeled front elevation. And then the exit, the exit elevation is really the front elevation in terms of fronting Eastern Boulevard. Is there any signage that's going to be incorporated on that facade, or is this what we're seeing as what you're building, except it's mislabeled, essentially?
Well, I mean, we have two frontages, so I guess we could argue that this is the front facing Kingston Road. But I see the point that we also have a frontage facing Eastern Boulevard. So I would have to pull up the renderings and see what they show for signage on that facade. I think that's what we're looking at here on the bottom is the entrance to the tunnel, if I'm not mistaken. Or is that the exit, Brian?
So that is the entrance.
Right, so that's the entrance. That's facing the electrical
Facing
substation.
east. Yeah.
Right. And then the long elevation above is facing Plan North, which is another commercial building, wall to wall. The long elevation here is facing Kingston toward the inside of our site where all the car parks are. And then the smaller elevation at the bottom is facing Eastern. And I guess the question is that shorter elevation that's facing Eastern Boulevard, is that going to have any additional signage, or is it kind of as shown on this rendering? That's what I'm thinking the question.
Yeah, I think that's the question. And the affixed signage, yeah, is envisioned to all face towards Kingston technically, but it really will be visible for the north for the traffic on Eastern. But yeah, the shiny shell, the car wash, the logo there is technically on the south side of the building facing Kingston, but will certainly be visible from Eastern. There will be no signage on the we'll call it the western side of the building facing west, facing Eastern. It will be the pylon sign that is detached, that is on Eastern. That's the only signage that will be near Eastern. There won't be any affixed signage on the building that's directly facing Eastern. But I understand that the point, this is a prototype, and we could certainly easily provide a more detailed exhibit showing all four sides.
Yeah. Just for clarity, so the site plan is indicating I guess a footprint that really is which is what's indicated on your rear elevation, which is really should be your front elevation. Am I right?
You may be correct that we have to do a mirrored footprint.
Yeah. And I just want to understand clearly how the signage is integrated on that, because there is no signage currently. That's all.
On this rendering.
Yeah.
No, it's reflected in subsequent, exhibits, but we could certainly call it out on on the plan view, site plan here.
Okay.
Any further comments or questions, James?
No, that's it.
Okay,
Thank you.
You're welcome.
thanks. Okay, so so unlike, the previous submission, the reason why I asked about the design guidelines is there is, these guidelines that were just adopted. There are some mentions of street orientation, but certainly not as rigorous for this area. And I'm guessing that's because this area is still evolving, and/or the committee who formulated these didn't have that in mind. Whatever the case, this is much different than our last one in terms of the guidelines that have been adopted. And there are certainly no resolutions that are quite as stringent as the ones that we have last gone through with the previous submittal. However, there are a couple here that I'd like to point out. Entrances should be oriented to the street. Just again, I think, you do have an existing sidewalk, and in the scheme, you do have a pedestrian circulation, just the stripes across the drive aisle to get to the building entrance. I'm assuming I don't know what the operations are. Some car washes have, a place where people go into buy various things for car washing. Does this operation have that type of public, access space within it, or is it merely just the operations staff that has access to the building?
It's a great question. So we are showing a walkway from Eastern Boulevard to the west side of the building that'll have a walkway to a retail area. You'll enter in, and we call that a members lounge. We don't have any point of sale activity there. We don't sell products, or it's just simply a location where our patrons can come in, use a bathroom facility. We offer free drinks, coffee for our customers that have finished vacuuming their car or are about to do that. But it's simply just a kind of a members lounge and a restroom. But that is not connected in any way to the actual car wash tunnel. They wouldn't have access to that in any way. That's just it's a kind of an interface with our customers and employees that will be servicing the vacuum stalls with these self-serve vacuums. We provide free towels, free glass cleaner, free spray, and so the employees are helping the patrons as they're cleaning their own cars, restocking those towels and materials, and helping with garbage removal, etc.
Okay, understood. And how wide is that sidewalk that is along that western elevation?
The southern, or you mean the existing?
I guess the sidewalk that goes along the frontage of the building that faces Kingston Road.
Yeah, let's look here. It's going to be certainly larger than 5 feet. I'm trying to pull the plans right now.
Okay. I mean, just scaling based on. It looks like it's probably 7 or so.
So it's certainly under 10 feet, but more than 5.
Okay. Yeah, so I think I'll say it's adequate for, circulation and going through there. So You mentioned, my next question is on parking spaces. You have 24 provided, I think you said. How many are required? I know that was a part of the staff comment, just out of curiosity in comparison.
One,
I think, well,
Per code.
but that's not, I don't think that's a fair assessment, but it's a different type of a car wash operation is what the code was intended for.
Nonetheless, what is the answer to that?
well, the requirements, and the question I had on this is that there's different requirements, and I don't know if they're additive or if they're, I mean, so for the car wash tunnel, rollover tunnel, there's required 9. For the requirement for drying vehicles is 2. Additional parking spaces, we're showing, Matt, we're showing 2. For the vacuum requirement, it's 1. So
Okay. So let's
I
say at
don't think
most it's 14. So
we got an additional 10. The one
Yeah.
thing I would point out is yeah, there's 24 stalls, which we're always fighting to provide enough parking. It's usually the opposite battle of providing adequate. The stalls are larger than average. They're over
see that,
13.
yeah.
They're over 13 feet wide and about 18 feet deep. We provide larger stalls because, as you can imagine, people are parking. They're opening their doors constantly as they're vacuuming, and so there has to be more space. Everybody's going to be knocking the doors together, and so they're larger in scale and provide plenty of space for the patrons to clean the car and pull out and move through the site.
Okay. So I guess, just kind of talking about the some of the concern that was raised about the Kingston Road. I see that your primary circulation is exiting, of course, the car wash out onto Eastern, coming in off of Eastern, a 2-way, and that leads you to the queue for the car wash. It looks like the main, other than, capturing people coming out of the peninsula on Kingston Road, coming in past the substation, is the main, I see that you have your dumpster, and I imagine that, it's a front end that the trash truck would come in off of Kingston and grab that dumpster, the trash there. I'm just wondering, is there a way to reorient the dumpster so that trash pickup could be at any other location and that entry could be closed? Do you see that as critical to your operation? Do you see that as a concession point to the community? Because I, hear that the majority of the concern is based on that. And you do have the other 2 entries. I'd love to hear your response to that.
The question that maybe I have asked Matt to answer is, I think we're trying to preserve existing connection points. I don't disagree. There is a level of traffic on Kingston. I think that connectivity from Kingston is very important, but we're open to going through the process to identify empirically with data to identify what would provide an acceptable level of service considering the existing traffic.
So is
The
it,
question I don't have is that does that come in a later stage of the process, or is that Matt, can you speak to that?
Yeah, procedurally and how the process works, we would have to work with the Department of Public Works to see if a traffic study is required, and that would kind of proof out what you're talking about, whether or not we think closing that entrance or leaving it open would have a drastic impact on the traffic there based on the requirements that go into the traffic studies. But that's something that we don't typically do this early in the process. That might be something we do for special exception before we go to the hearing.
So I guess my question is it more critical to you all for a write-in or a write-out at that location? For your business, I'm assuming it's a write-in, but I don't want to make that assumption. I want to ask you that question.
So is your question either or? You're asking which one,
Yeah,
egress or
right.
ingress?
Yes, is it more critical to your business for an entry or an exit at that location? Meaning if, there's concern about traffic and movement, it's a right-in only off of Kingston rather than a left turn in, or an exit, what's more critical to your?
The off of Kingston, I think the ingress would be more important.
The egress, sorry, I just want to make sure I heard you.
The ingress off of Kingston, the egress, the
okay.
entrance.
Sure, okay. Okay, I just wanted to ask that. Okay.
The more options for vehicular movement, the better. Yeah, I think we had to prioritize that ingress would be more important.
Okay. And then lastly, Marta, could you swing back to either rendering or the elevation, whatever shows that primary facade? Yeah, actually, can you go to the prototype photograph that was above that sheet, I think? Yeah, like that will do. Oops. We went past it. Okay, that's good too. So I know it's concrete block, and I think that's that painted block, or the blue part is, I think if it's natural block and can be a natural material, I think you had kind of a red hue concrete block. My question would be, since the design guidelines are super specific, as we've already heard, but I think kind of the natural if you were to create a concrete block of the soils around, you'd probably get more of a buff color rather than a reddish color, and I would encourage that to kind of fit in with the area and just feel like it's a more natural choice. Can you go to the I don't know which page it was that had the materials photograph on it, Marta? Yeah, one of those 23. Great. Yeah, so what portion of the facade is that Sonoma color, the reddish?
So you could probably see if you scroll up to let's see what page that is. I think it is the kind of wainscot lower section with the lighter tone.
I can't tell from this. So, okay. Yeah. So it's the shaded gray. Okay.
Shaded gray down below.
Yeah, I think
it's a lighter tone above.
Right. Okay. Well, I think full colored CMU block. So is there any red? I don't see that labeled. I mean, I would be happier to not see any of the red, but I'm just trying to get an understanding of where that is on the building.
I think we're open to, the materials we're showing is that split face block. There's the metal painted component. There's the glass. Those are the exterior materials that we're proposing. As far as color tones, we're open to looking at palettes that we think that the community thinks is complementary to the streetscape there. So I don't know if the samples we provided, to be totally honest with you, were kind of an example.
Okay, that's fine.
I don't know if that's the kind of the absolute vision just yet, but would love input on color tones. Yeah. The blue and I will say this: the blue and the orange is the kind of the branding theme of Shiny Shell. So the color tones of the masonry material I think our only concern would be that that's a softer tone, so it's not conflicting with the blue and the orange of the Shiny Shell brand.
Sure. Okay. Well, I don't think we're at odds with that then. I mean, I would say if it's a brick, I would say that reddish color makes sense. CMU, you know, just, I don't think that's quite appropriate. So if that's could be left out, that's great. So I guess just to summarize, you know, I'd love to talk about building orientation, but the design guidelines aren't as specific. You do have an entry off of the street that leads to your publicly accessible space. And I think given that, you know, the washing or the vacuum spaces are needed for the business, I don't think that that is out of the realm. I think if you could investigate addressing the community concerns by limiting, maybe potentially removing, but at least limiting the Kingston entrance, that would be probably in favor of everyone. Otherwise, that's the end of my comments and questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate the input.
And with that, I'll just ask if there's someone from the panel who would like to make a motion. Again, it's to approve with conditions, or to not approve. Okay, since I picked on Mr. Stevens earlier, I'm going to go to Mr. Khan for a motion.
Okay. I move that we approve the design subject to comments from the staff as it relates to several items, one of which is a submission of final samples and colors be provided to the staff, that the revised elevations represent what's actually happening on this particular site, including the signage size and location on the building, that we receive, and it would be subject to a review by the Department of Public Works at the appropriate time, dealing with the access and or egress to Kingston Road, and verification that a drive-by lane is not required by the county, and that there be clarity around the site lighting that's not shown on the building itself.
Okay, thank you for that. I'll just pause here and just ask if there are any discussions. I don't have any. I think that motion's pretty clear. Anyone else on the panel before I ask for a second?
I second.
Well, hang on. Don't second yet. Okay, yes, Marta.
Can you please clarify if the applicant is asked to come back, or the project can be reviewed administratively along with you?
Mr. Khan, I'll defer to you as you stated the motion. Do you think this could be done outside of a return to the DRP panel? Just with staff?
Yes, I'm sorry, certainly with the staff for that.
Okay. Okay, so the motion is approved conditions going to staff, not back to the panel. Okay, and so I will now ask for a second to the motion that's on the table.
A second.
Thank you, Mr. Stevens.
You're welcome.
Okay, with that second, I'll ask all those in favor say aye.
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 Aye. Kelly, did I hear you? I'm not sure I did.
Did. Yep.
Okay,
Yes.
very good. The motion carries. Thank you. Thanks for bearing with our questions. And now we will move on to item number 3.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, so item number 3 is 319 York Road, the Green Turtle in downtown Towson, subject to the downtown Towson commercial review. So thank you for the lateness of the hour. I would ask the presenter to keep this a pretty focused presentation. So with that, the floor is yours.
Hi, good evening, everyone. Thanks for getting our project onto your docket here this evening. My name is Ian Zukowski. I'm the project architect for the Green Turtle. This is an existing structure that was built in the 50s. I believe it last served as a pizza restaurant on the ground floor. The second floor has been vacant for some time, and I believe its prior use was an office. The Green Turtle is leasing this entire building, and they're going to bring a restaurant, bar to both levels of the building. In an effort to gain some outdoor space, which is really the crux of our project here, we are proposing to remove a portion of the second floor of the building, essentially pulling the second floor facade back to create an outdoor patio space, but up on this, elevated above the street level here. That space up there was it's approximately 1,200 square feet. People will be out there seasonally as the weather permits, of course. The new exterior wall up on that second floor will have a few overhead doors and a storefront type system. And these overhead doors may be opened as the tenants wish. On the ground floor level, the previous tenant had installed some overhead doors. They're not floor to ceiling overhead or full height overhead doors. There's a knee wall, partial height wall there. So these are really just overhead window kind of treatments. That's all staying. The building on the exterior will receive some new finishes. The portion of the building to the south and at the rear of the building, it's stucco with a little bit of exposed CMU masonry in places. The stucco will be repaired. It's cracking and deteriorating a few places. It'll be painted, and the rest of the rear of the building will be painted also. The front of the building, the brick's going to remain. We are proposing to coat it with a lime wash product, which is a little different than paint. We talked about that in a little bit. Some of the other features here, there is a stair tower pulled over on the north side of the front facade. That's currently clad in an offensive vinyl siding, so I'm proposing to pull that off and put a fiberboard siding up there, hardy plank type product, and that'll be painted. All the metal products and systems on the building, such as the canopy, there's this a metal cladding system beneath these overhead doors on the ground level. That'll be painted, as well as any of the storefront systems and doors down at the ground level. And we're also proposing to put some signage up on the existing canopy and a green turtle that will be installed at this stair tower that I previously mentioned. So, and Marta has that up on the screen now. So look for any questions or comments.
Okay, thank you for that. As before we move on to the DRP comments, I'll ask Marta if there are any speakers from the public for this project.
Cecily, I don't have anyone who signed up, but let me check with Brett very quickly. Brett, do we have anyone who would like to speak?
Yeah, no one in the chat.
Okay. Thank you. Marta, you can move on to the staff report if you're ready. Thank you.
Just a second, Cecily. I'm checking one more chat if there are anyone. No, there is just question. Okay. So Department of Planning prepared our staff by section 32-4-238-2B and section 32-4-204F of Baltimore County Code, which establishes the requirement of any development in the downtown district to review by the by the Baltimore County Design Review Panel. The staff report will follow the Baltimore County zoning regulations, code references to the project conformance with regulations as set forth in section 259, that's 16, downtown district. So in regards to environmental sustainability, staff recommends approval subject to the following conditions: indicate how the proposed design will comply with the LEED or NGBS standards. Number 2, provide rooftop patio plants which play a part in preventing air pollution, reducing the heat island effect, and adding green space to provide relief from the built environment. In terms of block configuration, site design, and parking, nothing new is proposed, so there are no comments. In terms of downtown open space, staff recommends approval of the proposed open space subject to the following conditions. Number 1, provide calculation and show on the plan the open space requirement of 5% of gross average of the development site. Number 2, clarify if any coverage is being proposed to the outdoor patio. Provide details for proposed outdoor patio furniture to ensure space for plants. Number 3, provide bike racks on the street level. In terms of building principal architectures, staff recommends approval of the proposed architecture. For building materials, staff recommends approval of the building materials. And same for lighting, staff recommends approval of the lighting. And for signage, staff recommends approval of the proposed signage subject to the following condition: provide drawings to show relationships between the proposed green turtle sign and the existing street trees and street lights. Signage should be located and designed to avoid conflicts with this existing street trees and street lights. And this concludes the staff report.
Very good. Thank you, Marta. So we'll move through the panel comments and questions at this time. Let's start with Kelly.
I agree with the staff comments, specifically, I'm sorry, I'm just checking my notes here, with number 2 on environmental sustainability. Provide rooftop patio plants, which play a part in preventing air pollution, reducing the heat island effect, and adding green space, as well as a plan that supports that. Everything else I agree with, since nothing new is being proposed.
Okay, thank you, Kelly. Donald, if you'd like to go next.
Yes, I don't have any major concerns whatsoever, other than a question of how the roof drains of this open deck, and whether there will be any indication of that on the street side of the building, or how that's actually going to be dealt with, whether that's a concern.
Yes, of course. Roof drainage is a big concern for the project, not only for the patio but the rest of the building. So we have to essentially create a new roof behind what will be a parapet to enclose this patio space. We will have through wall scuppers, and those scuppers will drain down onto a gutter, which will be located just above the existing canopy. So it's not, that portion isn't really observable from the street. And then that gutter will drain off. I believe it drains off onto both sides of the building, the north and south side, and will be directly piped into an existing underground drain pipe. The biggest evidence that we'll see of that is just some new downspouts leading off of this canopy. And you may be able to see some of the pictures. So these downspouts kind of hug the building, not the canopy. So they're not really sticking out per se.
And the intent, thank you. And the intent is to keep that existing portion of that existing brick wall as the front of the canopy.
Yeah, yes, that's exactly right. So we knew we had to have, of course, you have to have a guardrail on this
Right.
patio. So hey, let's just keep the wall at a little bit more than 3 feet high, and that will act as a guard. And I think it's going to be more attractive than having a metal railing there.
Right. No, I understand. That's my only question.
Thanks.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Sharma, Raj, would you like to go next?
I concur with his staff report. No additional question or comment.
Okay, very good. And James, Mr. Stevens, if you'd like to go next.
Sure. I mean, Donald I'm just going to rubber stamp what he said, because that was really my concern pertaining to the wood tile decking that's going to be on that roof assembly, and how drainage was going to happen. And I guess when you mentioned something about the scuppers, well, there's scuppers. I mean, are they indicated on that east elevation or not?
No, I don't believe they were on this one, but we can certainly follow up to show that. But we're looking to minimize the visual impact of this. We prefer it to be as low key and as invisible as we can make it.
Okay, no, I understand that. As long as you're dealing with it and you're going to handle it in the best of ways. The only concern for me is there will be water going below that wood deck surface onto the roof, and how is it going to be handled in the best of ways? That's all.
Yes, sir, certainly.
I mean, that's my only comment.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, I think I'm up. Yeah, I mean, I think this will be a great improvement. I think your choice of materials is quite nice, and the color scheme is, I think quite appropriate relative to the brand, but also fits within the York streetscape quite well. So it's nice to see this area being revitalized. As my main question is related to bike parking, and if you have space to accommodate that, can you accommodate that? My other only comment is looking at Google, and I think from July 2022, so fairly recent street image here. Those trees look pretty beat up and not doing so well. And I don't know how many are along your frontage. It might only be 2. Sorry, I lost my.
Right.
Yeah, 2. I would highly encourage those to be replaced if that's in the purview of the developer to replace. I mean, it looks like, the streetscape was per the Towson standard. It has the brick edging and concrete and brick, and that looks in pretty good shape, but those trees are just suffering. So I'd say as part of the revitalization, yeah, that picture looks nice compared to what they actually look like.
They're a little
honestly.
scrappy, sure.
Yeah, they're pretty scrappy and beat up. I don't think they're doing so well. So I would say, you know, bike parking and trees should be part of this effort.
May I respond to one of those comments?
Yeah, yep, absolutely.
So the bike park is what makes me concerned with. So, you know, it's the sidewalk here is narrowing as you go down, as you move southward here. And at one point, well, the best available spot for the bike parking is on an incline. And that's evident, well, in the photo that you had there on the screen in the Google Street View. But the biggest concern I have is that, well, that sidewalk, it's about 9 or 10 feet between our front wall and that last planter before the driveway. You know, my concern is just choking down the sidewalk. This is a busy sidewalk. You know, we've been there a number of times there, and there's a lot of usage there. I think there's a bus stop up on that north corner there at Chesapeake and York. So, yeah, we're just kind of, that's just my concern is impeding the sidewalk or choking that sidewalk down between our building wall and the stuff that's on the sidewalk between the planter, there's a trash can, there's another planter up the road there. We certainly don't have a problem with putting in a bike rack, but I just have a little concern with the available space.
Yeah, and I appreciate the, you know, pedestrian access. I don't know if you could get creative, if it could be, I don't know if you have, you know, building mounted or something else. I just think there are going to be students who ride their bikes here to work.
Agreed.
And it's, you know, pretty vital, even if it's not on the public sidewalk, you know, out front, if there's a space that's well lit that could be for employees and bike parking. Given the constraints on the York Road side, I would, you know, encourage that.
Okay,
and
we can do that.
Yeah. And I think that's all I have are the trees and the bike parking. So with that, I'll ask one of my fellow panel members to make a motion. Again, it's approve with conditions, or not approve. Anyone jump in? Otherwise, I'll run down.
Approve with conditions, definitely.
Okay. Well, would you like to make a motion in that regard, Mr. Stevens?
I make a motion. I make a motion to approve with conditions. The incorporating trees replacement and and the bike parking to some degree, whether that's on the exterior or the interior of the building.
Okay, and then, sorry, I'll ask the question because Marta will ask. If I don't, is that approve with conditions and working with staff, or is that approve conditions return to DRP?
No, with staff, definitely.
Okay. All right, I'll just ask if there's any debate amongst or other further questions from the panelists.
I would suggest again with the staff that the design team provide a thought out elevation of the front that shows the drainage so that how that gets resolved is as sensitive as the rest of the project. I think it can be done the way you're headed for sure, but I think having an elevation of that to satisfy that there's no strange conditions coming out of it, I think would help.
Okay, so you'd like to revise the motion to include an updated elevation to address the roof drainage? Does that sound right? I'm just trying to summarize for staff so that, okay.
Yes.
All right. Very good. Okay, that sounds good. With that on the table, I'll ask for a second of the motion.
Second.
Okay, thank you. And all in favor, say aye.
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 Cecily, I'm sorry
Oh,
for,
yep, sorry. Go
sorry
ahead,
for
Marta.
interrupting. Are the conditions include to comply with staff report conditions or not?
I'll turn back to Mr. Stevens for that.
Well, I would say yes.
Okay. All right, so sorry, I'll ask for the ayes again, just to go through them. So all in favor of the motion on the table? Say
Aye.
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 Aye, I think that was everyone. I think I missed someone, but the motion carries because I heard 4 at least. So thank you all for hanging with us tonight. And I have one more order of business, is if there is nothing further from staff, I'd like to ask for a motion from the panelists to adjourn the meeting.
So moved.
Very
I second.
good.
Second.
Thank you. Thank you for all volunteering. And with that, any opposed and none heard, the motion carries. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Definitely. Thank
Good job,
everyone.
everybody.
Thanks. Thanks for
Thank
having me.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Good night.